Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello, and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. This episode is going to be all about soy. I recently had a guest on the podcast, and I almost kind of want to apologize to you guys because as the podcast is gaining popularity, I'm getting people who are requesting to be on as guests, and most of the time, to be honest, whenever I have a guest on, there's somebody that I know that's in my circle, or I've heard them on another podcast, so I have a little bit of a background. This person had approached me, and it was just kind of someone random on Instagram, but she was a registered dietitian, so I thought, okay, it would be good. It seemed like she had a topic that we could talk about. It was all about menopause and women's health. And, you know, I'm not an expert in that area. I've read up about it. I'm a registered dietitian. Obviously, I am a nutrition expert, but I'm not an expert in that particular area. So I figured it would definitely be a great topic to have her on. What I learned from this experience is a couple things. Number one, I am going to start creating a application process for anybody that wants to be a guest on the podcast. From there, based off of their answers, I might even set up like a little call just to touch base and get the right vibe, or like hear their side, or kind of certain talking points. And then from there, I'll actually allow them to be a guest. And here's why. If you listen to that episode, it wasn't bad. There were some things that were said that was very helpful. But I felt like it was very biased, and it was pretty fear-based, and I'm not sure. I'm kind of curious. I would actually love if you had listened to the episode, and I'm curious if you felt what I felt, and I kind of was caught off guard, so I didn't really ask. I don't feel like I even did my part by asking the right questions and kind of calling her out on some things. So what I decided to do is record a podcast today about a couple of the things that was said, mostly related to soy. But also, I do want to know from you. If you could email me, tipswithtony@gmail.com, and just kind of let me know what you thought of the episode. And if you think maybe I'm overreacting, or if you agree with me, I'm very, very curious. And I do apologize, like I said, if it made you fearful of plastics or soy or just so many things that just didn't really, I don't know. I wanted to challenge her on the science, but I decided to kind of let it go. So now I am doing an episode about soy. Because one thing that was mentioned was about how soy is the worst thing you could ever eat because of the Roundup and companies like Monsanto. And listen, I'm not ignorant to the fact that Monsanto is a huge company and has a lot of genetically modified organisms, so GMOs, to help with their crops and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's not as bad as she was making it seem. And it also is, you have to remember too, a lot of the soy-based products that are healthy for you, so the best sources like soybeans, edamame, tofu, soy milk, soy nuts, tempeh, those sort of things, they're usually actually made with non-GMO crops. So if you, not that there's anything wrong with GMOs, but I've had an episode about that before, but if that is something that concerns you, if you notice on a lot of those like tofu like labels and stuff, you'll see that non-GMO stamp. Okay, so I wanted to kind of just point that out. Also, in my research, I actually have found soy is beneficial and can actually ease symptoms for those going through menopause. So that's where I was kind of just like, I'm not really sure where this is coming from. But the studies that I've read show that those who are going through menopause, because you have to remember, when you're going through menopause, your hormones are changing, there's less estrogen, more progesterone, and so therefore the added amount of estrogen from the soy could actually help with the symptoms. And here's another thing too. it's not like crazy amounts of estrogen that are negatively affecting your hormones. It's if you eat moderate amount of soy, like a couple of times a week, it's not going to make a dramatic difference in your actually, like, it's not going to raise estrogen in the body. It doesn't work like that. There are phytoestrogens, and there also have things like antioxidant properties that actually can benefit your heart health. And soy also has what are called isoflavones, which are also super beneficial. So like anything, I've always said, it's not one food that makes or breaks the diet. It doesn't make it good or bad. It is the complete lifestyle, and it's the complete balance of the dish. And soy itself, when you choose the high quality sources, is going to be really rich in these omega-3s, in those healthy fats. There's no saturated fat. It's a good fiber source. And if you're someone who kind of eats a lot of meat, once again, meat is not bad, but say you wanted to do a meatless meal, and now you go without the tofu or the tempeh, you're basically just eating vegetables and rice, which is fine, but it's not balanced, and you're going to be really hungry, and it's not filling. And so therefore, I think soy can be a great addition to the diet, especially if you're vegan or vegetarian. It's one of the plant-based proteins that actually have complete all the amino acids. So it's definitely can be beneficial. So that's kind of just like my short little rant based off of kind of just that previous episode. But what I wanted to do for you guys is to kind of help you explain, maybe when you do want to actually be mindful of how much soy you're taking in, or maybe certain conditions or ailments that might require you to be soy-free. So obviously, if there's an allergy to soy, we want to avoid it. But a lot of questions, I actually posted something on my story the other day, and I asked people like what questions they had, and these are the ones that came up. So I'm just going to kind of read them off to you, and then, or like they're basically the topics, and then I'm going to explain. So the question about soy and thyroid health. So I get this a lot. And realistically, consuming large amounts of soy, and when I say large amounts, it's like pretty much like every day. So consuming soy products every day, because the studies that have done, first of all, let me backtrack. Sorry, I get off on tangents, but a lot of the studies with soy actually have been done in animals and not in humans. So it's really hard to say that a certain food can affect a human the same as an animal, because as you know, there's difference between mammals and herbivores and carnivores, and it's just really hard to, they're not studying omnivores when they're doing this, so, like we are as humans. There's lots of studies being done in animals, not many in people. But when they do study people, they actually study Seventh-day Adventists, it's a religion that they believe in eating plant-based, so eating vegan, vegetarian, most of the time. It's like part of their religion. So those are the populations that are being studied in these groups. And so what the studies have shown in those particular populations is that if someone has hypothyroidism in combination with an iodine deficiency, which is also part of having hypothyroidism, then that's where it can be a little bit ineffective when it comes to taking medications and trying to monitor your thyroid health. And so that's where it can show that your thyroid becomes a little bit more hypoactive with consumption of soy when an iodine deficiency is present. Okay, so that's important to know. The second question I got is about is with soy and endometriosis. Endometriosis can cause infertility. So I kind of wanted to show that I wanted to talk about a couple things. So one, infertility in general, consuming soy products, it doesn't make you less fertile for a male or a female. There's a lot of misconceptions that if men consume too much soy, that it's going to screw their hormones and cause them to be infertile, which is not true. There was a study that was done that did show the man what became infertile, but this was a study when it was done in animals. I mean, it was done in humans, not in animals. And in this study, the men were drinking 3 quarts of soy milk a day. 3 quarts of soy milk. So let's be serious. Are we having 3 quarts of soy milk ever? I hope not. 3 quarts of anything, and even like that's ridiculous. like no, absolutely not. So in that situation, obviously that was excessive, and so of course, if we do things in extremes, there's always going to be symptoms and issues there. The interesting part about that is that even in that study where they were consuming 3 quarts of soy, and maybe it was making the man a little bit less fertile, believe it or not, it was actually showing he had lower blood pressure, better insulin sensitivity, insulin resistance, and also less inflammation. So there's also this conception that soy causes inflammation, but it depends on the state. So inflammation in the body in opposed to cancer risk is different than inflammation in the body like when it comes to gastrointestinal inflammation. So I say that to say that there's also this misconception that soy can cause breast cancer, but because of the antioxidant properties in soy, it's actually there's even studies that actually suggest that certain types of soy, like tofu and edamame, can actually be preventative for breast cancer. So listen, if you are a breast cancer survivor, if you know someone who has breast cancer, and they're hesitant to have soy in their diet, then I would not push it. But I do want to just kind of show you, and I wouldn't push it to do it to prevent it, and to not do it because you're afraid that you're going to get it. In general, I would just say, like anything, we just want to be mindful of how frequently you're having something, and is the rest of your diet balanced? So when it comes to inflammation with like cancer, there's actually, and heart health, consuming soy in the diet can actually be beneficial in decreasing that inflammation. When it comes to inflammation in the gut, so anything GI related, it's what is shown is that those with autoimmune conditions in general just tend to have an increased permeability in the gut. So they're more sensitive to certain foods. So not just soy, but things like wheat and dairy and nuts and stuff like that. So therefore, those with autoimmune diseases are recommended, might benefit, not even recommended, they might benefit from removing soy from the diet. And this is, once again, when it becomes a case-by-case basis, and which is why you don't want to avoid all of the different allergens or the different sensitivities that are likely related to being an issue with those with autoimmune diseases, which are usually pretty common, like the wheat, the gluten, and the soy. And the dairy. But it's important that if you do notice that you in particular have a sensitivity to dairy, you would remove it, but maybe soy doesn't bother you. So it's important that you need to know it's on a case-by-case basis. Okay? I'm looking through my notes here. I don't really think that, I think that we pretty much covered a lot of what was being, all of the different questions that I usually get related to soy. What I will say is obviously stick to those healthy sources of soy. Obviously, the less processed, the better. So things like hot dogs and ice cream and snack bars, they are made with soy products, but it's kind of not, it's not eating soy from, like eating tofu, edamame, tempeh, stuff like that. Soy protein concentrate still has the high isoflavones, but soy protein isolate, so like certain protein powders, might not. So just be mindful of that it's okay to have, but when we're talking about good sources of soy, say you wanted to do a more plant-based type of meal, then you want to replace, you want to make sure that you're adding more of those whole foods in, rather than the processed versions of that. So yeah, I think that's it, guys. Definitely let me know what you think of this episode. I know it was a little bit random. I kind of went on a little bit of a rant. I kind of just made little notes here and there. But I'm curious what your thoughts are. So don't hesitate to email me, tipswithtony@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening. As always, this is Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.